so I'm Jen Friedlander. I just graduated from Middlebury College. I am working at the Food Literacy Project this summer, and I studied education for my independent study. So for my independent study, I was actually approached at Garage Bar by Mara Corlett, who Rowan knows. I don't know if she's here from Teach Kentucky or something, but she's just a good person. Anyway. She approached me, and she's actually running a camp called Blue Apple Players this summer. And in previous years, it's been funded by different corporations, but this year it's funded by General Mills, which is a food-based company. They do all like the Kellogg's cereals and stuff like that. So this year, the grant was based on wellness, and there's 4 different types of wellness that they focus on. It's physical, emotional, and spiritual, mental, and social. And she wanted me to talk about nutrition. And this group is kind of connected by, I guess, they kind of need some more social skills, and they need some help, like being empowered to make their own social decisions and kind of stand apart, because I think some of them struggle with that. They kind of like, I don't know, they needed a little help with some things. So it's actually focused on drama. So that was really fun for me, and that was a challenge. So I kind of wanted to tackle this by doing something they were all familiar with and incorporating drama and nutrition. So I put together a whole 2-hour session with them that I was leading them through the things that I chose. And one of them, I decided primarily to focus on physical wellness, because that's obviously the most relevant to nutrition and what we're kind of looking at in the food system. So the first activity I had them do was called Decision Alley. And we actually talked a little bit about the food system, or the food groups before, and we split up into our favorite food groups. So like meat, dairy, vegetables, and grains and fruits, the different 5 different food groups. So we split up, and I said, if everybody can draw one vegetable from this group, okay? I didn't tell them what we were going to do. And I was the vegetable group, so we went, and I only had like 2 other kids in my group. And there's probably 20 kids total. Most of them went to the meat and the dairy. And one kid was like, well, I don't know how to draw my favorite vegetable. I said, well, what's your favorite vegetable? He's like, lettuce. So that was kind of shocking to me. And I drew a carrot, like a very standard carrot, and the other kid in the group didn't know what I was drawing. So those were kind of some of the things I was seeing, like, okay, this is really interesting. Kids don't know what their food looks like. And then what we had them do is we had everybody stand in 2 rows like this and make kind of like aisles of a grocery store and hold up their fruit or their food. And one kid would go through and pick out, I said, so you can pick out 3 different foods from the aisle, and we're going to come up here and pretend like we're going to make a balanced meal. So we'd have kids pick, like, everybody picked buttermilk. Like, buttermilk was picked every single time. Like, some had fried chicken, some had pepperoni. So some of the meals were like buttermilk, fried chicken, pepperoni, and like lettuce. And most of them were based around like the meat and dairy. And no one picked beans. No one picked whole grains. No one picked like any of this. So we kind of, as they were going through and choosing these, I said, well, guys, is this a balanced meal? And why is this a balanced meal? Why isn't it? And so kind of trying to talk them through learning actively how they can be making better choices about food and nutrition. And Jimmy actually got back to me the other day and said, you know, a lot of these kids are very active learners, so I think that was one of the best ways that you can teach them about nutrition. And as I'll say, kind of when I wrap it up, but I think actually what that day was about for me was education. And I didn't really realize it until after we had our education day. And it's kind of, how do you introduce new ideas to a population that might see things differently, that might not actually know how to act around other people and around food in general. So I think I need to kind of speed this up because I'm kind of rambling. So another cool thing that Jimmy told me is they had them create their own town after this activity, and they told them they could only use land, water, and and natural resources to start. And every single person, if there wasn't a supermarket, they included a garden. And he said that that wasn't something that he would really have thought of that they would be aware of until after my presentation. So we talked about, can you go to farmers markets? Where do you get your food? Some of the things like that. I thought that was cool. So these kids were obviously learning to make their own decisions about food and kind of learning and thinking about food differently is how I kind of saw that. So then I did a little yoga with them. That was really funny, actually. I had this huge thing planned out, and we got through like 4 of the moves because like, this is so hard. So we just like passed on through that. And then the other one we did was social wellness. And I specifically had the social part focused around food because I think that when you're growing up, it's really important to know how to behave around food. And Mara actually talked to me before. She's like, some of these kids are going through kind of like eating disorders and different social issues around food, and like I would love to kind of tackle that. And that made me really think, there's definitely a set of social actions that we take around food, and if your family isn't really into food, and if you don't have these sets of knowledge around food, you're not going to know how to really act about some things. And I also see this with the food literacy project. Some of the kids we bring on the farm are making very inappropriate comments about the people working on the farm and about the type of food that's grown, like, yuck, I can't believe people eat this. So it's also about teaching kids how to appropriately act around food, and I kind of tried to involve that. And so we did some improv scenes about kind of picking up on social cues about food and how you can make everybody feel comfortable in a social situation when there's food involved. So I think some of the really cool things that I took away from this was that there's a lot of education and learning that needs to happen around food, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. And drama and being active is one of the ways to do it. And these kids totally ran with it. I thought they were gonna think I was so weird, so lame. Who's this girl trying to do this, weird drama thing? And they totally loved it, and they all were able to learn together. And some of the questions I guess I had after this was how we can make social issues around food more visible and more talked about, because there's definitely ways of being around food that are not innate to everybody, and if you don't have a supportive system for that, how are you going to start the conversation? My parents were here this weekend, so are, and I said, Dad, we volunteered, and I said, wouldn't you want to start a garden at home? He's like, well, why would I want to do that when I can just go to the farmer's market and buy it? And this is my dad and I having a conversation that's still uncomfortable for me to kind of reach different ways. So I think it's really important to get just people in social situations acting around food in different ways and being able to comfortably come up with your own ideas about it. And I really hope that I help these kids do that in some extent. Yeah.